Well, hey there, it's Chris with Actin Creative, and this is a handwoven experience. And in this episode, I'm going to talk about moving the beater bar. So, when you are weaving, you have some kind of elemental motions that you make over and over again. And moving a beater bar is one of them. You always have a shuttle that you're tossing right to left, and then you have a beater bar that comes forward and back. But if you're just starting, it may be kind of confusing. How tight do you pull? What kind of pressure do you apply? How does this go? So let's talk about some ideas for how to approach moving your beater bar. So for my money, I want you to find a motion that is comfortable and safe and repeatable, something that can be intuitive for you. Here's what I would recommend. Pull the beater bar forward, and you can kind of feel when it hits the resistance, when it hits the other yarns, and just give it a little squeeze and release it. That's the whole thing. Nothing crazy. I don't think you have to get real physical with it. None of that kind of stuff. I want you to create a motion for you that you can do without thinking about it, and it is safe for neck, back, shoulders, all of that kind of stuff. So as you are playing with it, just kind of feel out how tight do I naturally do it. And then do that over and over and over again. And that becomes your standard baseline motion for moving your beater bar forward and back, right? From there, you can make modifications if you need to per your pattern. So let's talk about when that might come into play. First of all, if you have a pattern that's a little more dense like this is a rep weave or a rip smata. And you can see, oh, look at that. It's real cushy. It's a real dense kind of rich kind of fabric. And I want my weft yarns to be very close together because you can see these are my warp yarns. My warp yarns are very close together. I want the whole thing to have some nice kind of heft to it, right? So take your normal, whatever your normal motion is, and maybe lean back just a little bit. Yeah, just give it just a little extra energy into it. Or if it's easier, just think about what kind of pressure you want to apply to make sure it's a little closer together than normal, that each pick is closer together. That's what this is called. When you lay in one weft yarn, that's called a pick, right? So that's one instance where you may want to kind of tweak your natural motion. If you're doing things like rugs are a great example. You want them packed very tightly together. So maybe in that instance, then you're I like the lean back approach. That's what I like. Just lean back a little more. Just let gravity help you here, right? So the other instance when you might think about how you are moving your beater bar is if you have a pattern that needs to be a specific shape, right? Do you see my pinwheels here? I want my pinwheels to have a certain kind of ratio to them between the warp and the weft, and that requires a certain amount of picks per inch, which is PPI. You'll see that little abbreviation in instructions for patterns, right? So here, let me show you my example. I have a little houndstooth check here. You've seen this before, I am sure, because I love this example. So here is my houndstooth check towel. Now, mostly I was playing with kind of the different color combinations and how they all interact with each other. But when it comes down to it, shape is very important to a houndstooth check. And the traditional shape for a houndstooth check is, see, here's my little example right here, is actually squarer than this. Mine ended up being kind of flat. They're more rectangular. Now, I wove this all using my natural kind of motion for the beater bar, forward and back, over and over and over again. But as I kind of analyze this, see how it's kind of rectangular like that? What I would do differently next time is I would actually, instead of moving my beater bar tighter, like putting more pressure, that's gonna make my towels more dense, I would actually change the proportions. Think about that. Think about actually modifying the pattern to suit you versus the other way around. You are in charge. So when you have a pattern that when you naturally weave it doesn't quite turn out the way that it's specified, right? Think about changing it. Can you change the spacing? Can you change how many warp yarns are in each stripe? Think about kind of modifying it to suit you. Because ultimately, what I found is that if I'm going to make a change to my natural motion, that's hard for me to remember over a long period of time. So if I can work with what I do automatically, instinctively, that is much better. It's also tend to be kind of healthier for me too. And I hope that you play with that and find out what you are comfortable with, because you're in charge. Yeah. If you're a beginner, just kicking it around, find something you like. Like I said, I like to hit the resistance, give a little squeeze, and release. That's it. And I know that I can do that over and over and over again, a million, trillion, thousand times, and that my fabric then will be consistent. Because when it comes down to it, that's what you're looking for, consistent fabric, and more importantly, a motion that is healthy for you, that you can do over and over again, right? So I hope that gave you a little something to think about as you are diving into the kind of core motions of weaving fabric on your loom, because before you know it, you just won't even think about it. You'll be worried about much more complicated things. But when it drills down to basics, these are things to ponder as you're just starting out. All right, friends, have a wonderful week. Happy weaving.